In the late 1960s, the martial arts world was exploding across the United States. Karate tournaments filled gymnasiums, and champions began to rise from relative obscurity into household names. At the heart of this cultural wave stood two men whose paths would cross in a way that would change martial arts history forever: Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris. Their first meeting was not in a Hollywood studio, nor on the set of a kung fu film, but at the world-famous Madison Square Garden in New York City, 1968. That night, Chuck Norris secured the World Karate Championship title, cementing his reputation as one of the fiercest competitors of his generation. Among those watching from the sidelines was Bruce Lee, already turning heads with his demonstrations of Chinese kung fu. What followed was not simply an introduction, but the beginning of a bond, one built on sweat, sparring, and respect, that would eventually give the world one of the most iconic fight scenes ever filmed.
Chuck Norris has often recalled that night in 1968, standing on the grand stage of Madison Square Garden. Having just been crowned champion, he was invited by Bruce Lee to participate in a demonstration. Bruce had been holding a kung fu exhibition, dazzling spectators with techniques most Americans had never seen before. Fluid, lightning fast, and unorthodox, Bruce's movements contrasted sharply with the rigid forms of traditional karate. When Bruce called Chuck to join him on stage, the audience watched with fascination. This was not a planned fight, nor a clash of egos, but a meeting of two martial artists testing and sharing their skills. Bruce demonstrated his gung fu techniques with Chuck, using him as a partner to showcase the speed, precision, and adaptability of his art. For Chuck, it was more than a demonstration. It was an awakening. He had seen martial artists from all over the world, but Bruce's confidence and control stood apart. There was no wasted motion, no flourish for the sake of appearance. Everything Bruce did was purposeful, efficient, and devastatingly effective.
That night sparked a friendship that carried far beyond Madison Square Garden. Over the next several years, Bruce and Chuck would train together regularly, often in Bruce's own backyard in Los Angeles. Chuck described these sessions vividly. "We worked out in his backyard, where he had a heavy bag hanging. We'd spend hours punching, kicking, and drilling. We did countless push-ups, sit-ups, and conditioning exercises. Training with Bruce wasn't about routines. It was about endurance, speed, and absolute control." These weren't casual workouts. Bruce pushed every partner to their limits, and Chuck was no exception. Their sessions often lasted 3 hours or more, blending physical conditioning with sparring drills. One exercise they practiced frequently was what Bruce called attacking techniques. The idea was simple but grueling. One person would attack while the other defended, and then they would switch roles. It was less about scoring points and more about sharpening reflexes, breaking rhythm, and adapting in real time. For 3 years, this became a pattern, hours of sweat and experimentation that influenced both men. For Chuck, it was an opportunity to refine his karate with the fluidity Bruce embodied. For Bruce, it was a chance to pressure test his evolving system of Jeet Kune Do against a world-class karate champion. Over the decades, many stories have circulated about who was better, Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris. Eyewitnesses from their private sparring sessions often claimed Bruce had the upper hand, his speed and creativity overwhelming even the disciplined karate of Norris. Some even went so far as to say Bruce kicked Chuck's ass in his own backyard. Chuck himself, however, has never entertained trash talk. Instead, he has consistently acknowledged Bruce as a rare, once-in-a-lifetime athlete and thinker.
He never called their training matches fights, but described them as exchanges, moments where both pushed each other to improve. Still, fans often frame the question as a rivalry. In truth, it was more a partnership. Each man brought something unique. Chuck, the structured, championship-tested karateka; Bruce, the innovator, dismantling traditions in search of truth in combat. One thing Chuck admired most about Bruce was his dedication to physical conditioning. Exercise was his life, Chuck admitted. Bruce trained with a relentlessness that seemed almost superhuman. His workouts were not about aesthetics or sport, but about function. Every push-up, sit-up, and bag drill was fuel for his philosophy. If the body is unprepared, the technique is useless. Training with Bruce, Chuck witnessed firsthand the incredible speed and athleticism that stunned audiences worldwide. Bruce's punches landed before the eye could register. His kicks came from impossible angles, and his stamina seemed endless. Even for a champion like Chuck, it was inspiring and humbling. Their backyard sessions continued until Bruce left for Hong Kong in the early 1970s. Hollywood had been hesitant to give him the leading roles he deserved, but Hong Kong embraced him with open arms. There, Bruce became not just a martial arts instructor or actor, but a global phenomenon. Though distance separated them, the foundation had been laid. And soon, Bruce would call on his old training partner for something legendary. In 1972, Bruce invited Chuck to play his opponent in The Way of the Dragon. The result was one of the most iconic fight scenes in cinema history: Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris inside Rome's Colosseum. What audiences didn't know was that the authenticity of that battle came directly from their years of backyard sparring. The way Bruce flowed around Chuck's structured karate stance, the way Chuck adjusted with counters, the pauses, the shifts in rhythm, all of it was rooted in the countless hours they had trained together. The fight was not a choreographed dance, but a carefully crafted narrative that showcased both men at their best. Bruce, the adaptable innovator; Chuck, the disciplined warrior. And just like in real life, the scene ended not with hatred, but with respect. Looking back, their first meeting in 1968 feels almost fated. Two martial artists at the height of their powers, coming together not as enemies, but as collaborators. The footage of Chuck receiving his championship title that year, paired with Bruce's kung fu demonstration, captures a pivotal moment in martial arts history. A moment where East met West, tradition met innovation, and friendship sparked a legacy. For 3 years, they pushed each other in ways no one else could. Chuck would go on to become a Hollywood action star in his own right, carrying karate into mainstream American cinema. Bruce Lee would become immortal, his life cut tragically short, but his philosophy spreading farther than he could have imagined. Their bond reminds us that greatness is not forged in isolation. It is built in the company of peers, in the fire of mutual challenge, and in the humility of respect. Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris were not just fighters, not just actors, they were craftsmen shaping the future of martial arts together. The story of Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris is not just about who was faster, stronger, or better. It is about two men from different worlds finding common ground in the love of martial arts. It is about how a meeting at Madison Square Garden grew into hours of backyard sweat, which then became one of the greatest cinematic fights of all time. In the end, what matters is not the rivalry, but the respect. Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris showed the world that martial arts was not about defeating others. It was about discovering yourself and helping your partner discover themselves too. And that is the true legacy of their friendship.